So I actually read loads of books this month. This year I've been reading like 2-3 books a month. This month, do you want to know how many books I read? 6 and a bit. 6 and a bit, a little bit. First book I finished, I talked about a bit last month, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it, and that is Wildcard by Marie Lu. I think I actually did my wrap up after I'd finished this book, but it was technically in November. Anywho, it was okay. Wasn't my favourite sequel. It was alright. The next book I read kind of got me back into the swing of reading quite a bit each day, which I'd kind of just fallen out of the habit of doing, and that was Theatre Shoes by Noel Streatfeild. And Streatfeild, Ballet Shoes Girl. This book has a very similar premise to Ballet Shoes, wherein there are 3 children who currently don't have a home, and they go and find themselves next to this theatre academy or dance academy, and they go and they train there and they try and find work in that kind of industry. And it's really fun to read, and it made me feel like when I was reading it I was like, I wish I had that kind of training when I was younger, but I wasn't a singing dancing kid. That wasn't me. It was enjoyable. I really liked it, and it kind of got me back into the swing of reading. The next book I read is a really short little picture book, but I read it in French, and that is Madeline by Ludwig Behelmans. And it is about this little girl called Madeline who goes to a boarding school in Paris, and it was very cute, very enjoyable. I used to love the movie when I was younger, and there's pictures on every page, so it didn't take too long, but it was cute, and it was a huge achievement for me to have read it in French, because my French is not great. It's getting there, it's not great. Then we're moving into kind of the tome topple territory. Now I participated in this readathon and did so well the first week. Second week I kind of flatlined. In total though, during the first week of the tome topple, I read 1,234 pages, which is a lot for me for a week. That is, I think it might be up there with the most I've read in a readathon, even though I didn't participate, or at least I didn't actively participate both weeks. Now the books that I read don't necessarily fall into the guidelines for the tome topple, but I'm going to tell you what I read in that time period. So yes, I know some of these don't count, but I'm counting them. I read them during the readathon. The first book I read that week was Muse of Nightmares, the sequel to Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and because it's a sequel I can't go into too much detail, but the first book is about follows 2 perspectives. One is about a guy who studies the city that kind of fell off the face of the earth, kind of lost all knowledge of it, and it kind of kept to itself, and the other is about this demigoddess and her family who live in a citadel floating above said city. This was the sequel to that book, and it was phenomenal. It was one of the best sequels I've ever read. It lived up to all of the hype, and it was just beautifully written, and I really want to reread them because they were just so good. I want more Laini Taylor books. When's the next one due? I also read, and this was another big achievement for me, The Little Prince, but I read it in French. This one was written by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Don't know if I said that right, but I read it in French. There's also illustrations in this one, and it took me a while because I'm learning French. I'm still a baby in terms of French. I feel like this is the kind of book that maybe I enjoyed it more in French than I would have in English, because there's a lot of, I've forgotten the word, symbolism. There's a lot of symbolism, and I feel like I just had to think about it a little bit more as I was reading it in French. I kind of see why it's so well known and why so many people like it. I enjoyed it. Probably reread it at some point just to keep up the French, you know what I mean. Next book I read during the tome topple, and I was so surprised that it only took me 6 days to read it, and that is Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. This is the 7th or something book in the Throne of Glass series. It follows the characters Kale and Nesrin as they go to try and elicit help for something that is happening in the books. Can't tell you. It's like 6 book in a series, so spoilers. Anyway, I wasn't expecting to like this book. Wasn't expecting to like it. Not because I don't like Sarah J Maas's writing, but just because I've kind of a little bit lost interest in the series. It's been so long between each book, and I haven't reread them since the first time I read them, so the details were kind of gone, and I wasn't super committed to enjoying this book. But I surprised myself by really enjoying it and finishing it super quick because I really liked it. I put my hands up. I was wrong. I didn't think I was gonna like it, but I did. Had some parts in it that were quite similar to Lord of the Rings. There were just certain mystical creatures and certain situations where I'm like, I see some Lord of the Rings here. I see some Lord of the Rings here. Does anyone else get that? Not in comparison to characters or anything, just specific settings and creatures, but I was kind of like, it's an interesting parallel. This is another book that I enjoyed, kind of surprised myself by enjoying, and it's huge, so I was kind of surprised that I read it so quickly. That is kind of where the big progress. No, it's not. I forgot about a book. I read another book. I borrowed it from the library, so I don't have a copy of it here with me, but I read My Mum, Tracy Beaker by Jacqueline Wilson, which is kind of a sequel, I guess, to the Tracy Beaker books, kind of a follow-on. Tracy Beaker is now an adult and she has a child, and you're following the child's perspective. And I enjoyed this book. It was very much like being back with the characters. Tracy Beaker still felt very like Tracy Beaker, even though she was an adult. And I'm not so sure I loved her kid Jessica all that much. I thought Jessica was a bit annoying. But it was so enjoyable to kind of be back in that little community that she built. And it was fun. It was fun to read it. Anyway, I enjoyed that book. I don't have it because I had to return it to the library, but it was fun to read. And that is where the big progress kind of stalled. I've gotten back into reading a bit every day now, but last week I think I read like 40 pages total, and it was all in the first day. And that was 40 pages of Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas, the last book in the Throne of Glass series, and we're again back with all of the characters and we're following all the perspectives again. I'm currently not very far in it. I'm only about 70 pages in, and it's massive, but I'm enjoying it so far. I know I haven't read that much this week, but I am enjoying it so far. It's just interesting. I'm surprised that I find this book series so easy to forget about. You know what I mean? Because when I read it, I enjoy it, but then I'm perfectly okay with not reading it for a very long time. It's just that weird balance that is there. Those are the books that I read in November. Let me know if you participated in Tome Topple, if you did better than me, if you remembered it was 2 weeks long. And that's it. I guess I will see you guys soon.